your house, and then you're dead in a double homicide less than an hour later.
The bodies were discovered in the woods just east of town here. Positive identified as Abigail J. Williams, 13, and Liberty Rose Lynn German, 14, of the Delphi area.
Why Libby? Why Abby? Why Delphi?
It felt like you never knew what was going to happen.
The killer is captured by Libby German's phone.
Somebody knows. Somebody out there knows who this person is.
If I knew something, I'd tell you.
The police were asking the public to look at their neighbors, their brothers, their friends.
This person is from Delphi.
The suspicion and the paranoia, it just took off like a tsunami.
If I was murdered, then come get me, mother.
Friends are suddenly snitching on you for no reason.
Every damn thing you've reported on your podcast has been a leak.
It was neighbor against neighbor.
Screenshot this.
It's a symptom of the community mind rot.
Well, this story just went nuts. They say it was a ritualistic cult that killed those girls.
This is a story about evil. Evil that was done to the girls and evil we've done to each other.
Delphi is a small, rural town. We have 2 intersections that have stoplights, and it's very small, but it's a very close-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. The kind of people that live in Delphi would give you the shirt off your back. Delphi felt very safe. February 13th is my birthday. I remember coming home from school, being all excited to go birthday dinner, celebrate with my family. I didn't get to do that year. Mom sat us down on the couch and said, "Dalton, 2 of your classmates are missing."
I'm her bestie, Aunt Em.
Abby and Libby were friends with everybody. They were inseparable. I was in 8th grade with them. If I could describe Liberty German in one word, it would be cheerful. Never had anything bad to say about anybody. And then Abigail Williams. She was spunky, a lot of freckles.
These girls were just salt of the earth kids, you know, sweet small town America kids. Abby loved saxophone and volleyball. She loved to read. She went camping with her family. Libby loved sports. She was a scholar, standout in school, and loved to paint, loved her crafts.
I dated both Abby and Libby. Just elementary school relationships, you know, texting back and forth. I was good friends with them both. This is Libby. She was a very outgoing person. She was very sweet, very kind. She had a very soft voice. Just very respectful person. It seemed like she cared more for others than she did herself. Libby was very smart in school. She was in all AP courses. She had dreams to become a veterinarian. This is Abby. People will say she had red hair, but I like to call it a strawberry orange. She was very shy, but she could make you smile. Abby had a nice smile. She is a very beautiful person. The night before, I texted with them late into the night. They were at Libby's grandparents' house making videos, just being silly. The next day, my phone's blown up with everybody messaging, "Hey, have you seen him? Hey, have you seen him?"
My initial thought of what had happened was that either they had run off or they were out past curfew, just doing what kids do. It's Delphi. You don't think anything bad is happening.
February 13th, 2017, the girls were off school. They decided they wanted to go out to the trails and walk the bridge. It's something that the kids there do. They were dropped off by Libby's older sister.
And when we got there, I told them goodbye. I told Libby I loved her. Then I left, and that was the last time I saw them.
They were told to be back at the drop-off point at 3 p.m. Libby's father showed up to pick them up.
He was getting close to there to pick them up. He'd been calling her. She wasn't answering.
He got out and went to look for them and couldn't find them. And the families got involved, the police got involved.
The sun was setting. There was no snow, but it was cold. I remember hearing that they sent out a search party.
As the night progressed, it just continually got more worried, you know, that something's not right here.
Now, many are on an extensive search to find them.
Very scary situation right now, and I just want her home.
Ravines, ditches, trash cans for phones, any sign of it, girls, and anything we can find.
I almost lost sense of what reality was going on. I mean, it was hard to fathom what we were going through.
The next day, woke up like it was any other day, got ready, and then got to school. I remember it being quiet. It was dead quiet.
One of my friends, her husband was in another group that was going along on the south side of the creek. He called his wife, and then she come running out and said, hey, they found him, they found him. I remember looking over saying, are they okay? I hadn't, and she wouldn't answer me.
Just overnight, what happened to Libby and Abby went from a local missing persons case to an international story. And the media was initially caught off guard with the severity of the crime.
2 bodies were discovered around 12:15 this afternoon, just east of Delphi, not too far from where I'm standing, actually, near Deer Creek.
When the news broke that they had found them, my immediate thought was they fell off the bridge. It was a dangerous bridge. It has rotting wood on it, not very stable. It looks rickety. I thought that it was a terrible accident.
The body's been positively identified as Abigail J. Williams, 13, of the Delphi area, and Liberty Rose Lynn German, 14, of the Delphi area. This is considered a double homicide investigation.
They invited me to come hiking with them. If I had a do-over, I would have gone with them that day. I do regret not going with them, yes.
This is the picture that was used in one of the first news releases. It's Libby. She looks full of life. Oh, this is kind of hard.
It's hard? Why is this hard?
I don't know, it's different. Holding it in my hand and looking at it as an actual picture than through a phone or a screen. That's why I was okay. Like, I'm 20 now. I thought I was okay with all this.
Police were giving out so little information in the early days, and the big question everyone had was, who did this? Was it someone passing through? Is it someone who knew the girls?
A lot of people are scared. You know, people are watching their backs, you know, locking their houses when they maybe didn't used to.
It's horrifying, and it's not the Indiana that I know.
This person got to be caught.
Police weren't releasing a lot of information, but behind the scenes, the manhunt was definitely on.
Why Libby? Why Abby? Why Delphi? Why Carroll County? I say that because this is a classic example and a clear example that evil lives amongst us.
Shown in front of me is an enlarged depiction of a person believed to be the suspect in this case. We are actively looking for this person. We believe this person is our suspect.
This image was captured from her cell phone. Liberty had the presence of mind
to turn on her video camera.
If you think about it, what police department ever gets an actual image of the killer shot by the victim? No one. No one gets that.
As poor as this picture is, somebody knows. Is it a family member? Is it a neighbor? Is it an acquaintance? Is it an associate? Or maybe that one guy that lives over at that one place that just kind of not right. Somebody knows. And if you're watching, we'll find you.
Again, we're not going to be able to share everything with you, but we are going to share this audio clip with you. Micah, play the clip, please.
I remember the first time I heard the audio of him saying down the hill. Holy crap, this is probably moments before he decided to kill them.
Down the hill. Down the hill.
Why Libby? Why Abby? Why Delphi?
They gave us a story about what had happened, but they didn't really tell us anything.
Is there any specific information that says the person is local or from far away? No. Could this be a stranger crime? That's a possibility. Question over here.
We didn't know if they had any kind of suspects, if they were looking at anybody. Are we looking for a serial killer? Are we looking for, a family member? We didn't know anything. My motivation to do what I do, you have to understand the freaking context here, okay? Comes from trying to open people's eyes to how this case developed, how law enforcement has handled it and steered it.
If you hear this today and you think, my God, that sounds like fill in the blank, call us. Make an anonymous tip. Tell us who you think it is.
The man on the bridge became known as Bridge Guy. Police asked for help in finding suspects. It started people thinking, am I living right next door to the killer and I don't even know it?
I'm suspicious of everybody at this point, looking around.
The life got sucked out of the town. Everybody became cautious of everyone else. You always carried something with you as a weapon just in case. I walked with mace, pepper spray, taser, always keeping my head on a swivel.
You're kind of paranoid all the time because he could be right behind you and you wouldn't even know it.
It was like something out of 1984. People were torn apart by this. The suspicion and the paranoia, once it hit the social media, it just took off like a tsunami.
The online community started getting nasty to one another. The amount of hate I've never seen in my life.
We were definitely looking at each other and others as possible suspects.
It was a collective worst nightmare, not only for family and friends, but for the entire community. They were murdered in cold blood. I've known Libby's family for years. I told Libby's grandma that I was going to do whatever I can to help find the killer. I made a promise to God, to myself, kind of to these girls, I'm going to fight for you.
Almost immediately, the wild speculation just went nuclear, from drug cartels to cult activity to sexting in an unwanted pregnancy. Were they strangled? Were they shot? I mean, people just couldn't fathom how two young girls out for a winter walk could have died in this horrible way. Speculation really ran rampant that no one really knew.
The families were trying to keep as much information as possible from getting to the public. They didn't want people to have all the gory details of what had happened to the girls.
There was no information about cause of death. It's like this information vacuum. And then suddenly these text messages show up in this online thread. And they are from a rescue worker who was at the scene. And it turns out it was Abby's uncle, a man named David Erskine.
I think one of the first places the Erskine texts appeared was on Reddit. It went to Facebook, it went to YouTube. When these texts hit the online community, it was like light bulbs coming on and bugs just swarming. People jumped all over them. Me and my other sister's boyfriend are the ones who found the girls Tuesday. Coroner's report stated everything was over by 3:30, no rape. Abby was dressed, Libby was nude. Libby's top half was covered with leaves and sticks, almost like they were trying to cover her. The only DNA would be from Libby's fingernails. She fought like hell. Whoever did it targeted Libby for sure and knew what they were doing with Abby. It was personal with Libby. There's talk of Libby being almost decapitated, which looks like it was done out of rage.
Police did not release the autopsies, the cause of death, or when exactly the girls were killed. When the Erskine post became public knowledge, people learned how Libby and Abby were murdered for the first time and that a knife may have been used.
It made people look differently at law enforcement, like, well, why didn't you tell us all of this?
The information about what actually happened was kept very tight by law enforcement. If you give out a little important piece of information, it could compromise the case. Typically, the only information that's released is what might help the case. But they're not going to release information just because people want to know. There has to be a need for them to know. Local, state, and federal police had a massive challenge on their hands. They had thousands of tips coming in that had to be taken, evaluated, covered, and the crime scene itself was huge. The lead agency was Carroll County, which is where the bodies were found. State police, though, were also very involved, and the FBI as well, mostly in an advisory capacity.
It wasn't long before the police started to really zero in on one person of interest among others, the man who owned the land where those girls' bodies were found, 77-year-old Ron Logan.
Ron Logan generally met the description of the man that was seen in the picture, potentially the bridge guy. And there are reports that he has been violent towards women in the past.
When I seen the picture of the bridge guy, I knew for certain that it was Ron Logan. That was his figure that I seen. My name is Connie Dillman. I knew Ron Logan. I had a relationship with him for approximately 6 years.
This is my backyard. My backyard just happens to be bigger than most people. How many people have a murder committed at their home in their backyard? Hey, there's the crime scene down there. See how the ground's much more matted down right in here? I think you're right there.
I was at my house. It was on the news when I heard it. The very day that I heard that Abby and Libby were murdered on his property, and I said, oh my God, he finally killed somebody. And I knew that he killed Abby and Libby. I knew he's capable of doing something like that. Ron's a dangerous man. He's a violent man. Ron told me that he's gonna kill me. I'm lucky to be sitting here talking to you. I met Ron Logan at a bar here in Delphi. I was probably around 22, 23. I liked his smile. We talked about horses, which I had horses and he had horses, and we struck up a relationship. Ron's property was right next to Monon High Bridge. He had some pasture. He had some goats and the horses. I moved in with him for a while, and it didn't really work out very well. He was controlling with me. Had to keep the house tidy and couldn't lay down on the couch. It just had to be the way he wanted it. But he wanted me there. It goes a little bit further than me in his life. I've pretty much a sex tool. Can we stop? Can we?
Yeah, we can stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from.
Oh, God.
When I didn't want to have sex, he forced it on me. And I was helpless. You know, I couldn't help myself. And when I did get away, he would always draw me back. One day, he had been working on putting a new door on a basement cellar, and I said I wanted to break it off with him. And out of the blue, he hit me over the head with the crescent wrench. And I remember taking off, running to my vehicle, and I remember falling to the ground. And I was afraid he was going to hit me again. So I was able to get on my hands and knees, and I crawled away. I got to my vehicle, and I was able to leave, and then I felt the blood running down my face. I barely remember the drive to the doctor's office, which is only a few miles to Delphi, and I had 7 staples put in my head. But I actually went to my sister's after that. I'm lucky I got out of that situation, but it took a long time. I remember him from the Inside Edition.
Liberty German shot this chilling image of the killer approaching the girls on a hiking trail, and she recorded the killer's voice.
What do you hear on there?
Nothing that I recognize at all. No one. I don't recognize the voice at all.
Wow. That's your voice. And I heard that voice down the hill. Thousands of times. It's Ron Logan saying, down the hill. And I called. I called the tip line.
Connie came forward with the story that she told the FBI, and they were clearly interested, and there was just something sketchy about Ron Logan. Ron was known to drive without a license in that community. You know, he was out on parole for these drunk driving offenses. On the day Libby and Abby were killed, Ron has this very strange alibi. He says he was driving with his cousin to Lafayette, Indiana. It's about an hour round trip drive to buy tropical fish.
Ironically, this tropical fish run is claimed to have happened the exact time Abby and Libby were abducted and killed. So this alibi was supported by Mr. Logan's cousin. When he was questioned by investigators, he said he didn't even see Ron Logan that day. And that's what led to Ron Logan becoming a suspect.
I talked to 2 FBI agents for a good hour. I had told about his violent tendencies and what he had done to me. I said, this is who killed Abby and Libby. This is your bridge guy. And that's Ron Logan.
The public did not know about the early investigation into Ron Logan. Everyone was focused on, paying respects to the girls, the viewing, and the funeral. My sister and I had discussed previously that maybe the killer might show up at the funeral. I was at work, but my sister discreetly and respectfully took pictures of people that showed up. Apparently, one person on our private group on Facebook zoomed in and shared these photos. There is a picture of a distant view of Libby's casket where you could see a blurred part of her head.
There was an uproar from the community.
I somehow get blamed for, the quote is, taking pictures of dead girls in their caskets.
Give me one word to describe Julie Melvin. You're a despicable human being. That's for certain.
I did not post the photos. I did not take the photos. And I would never, ever do such a thing. The online community came after me in a terrible way and said the most horrible things. She deserves to die. I was told not to go out of my house. I was going to get my head cut off. I got a 2-year restraining order against someone, a YouTuber, that just wouldn't leave me alone.
I, on my channel, unfortunately, said Julie Melvin posted this picture because it was being said to me from people that I believed would not lie. Later on, it come to find out it wasn't Julie Melvin.
Gonna read his for you.
I regret ever having participated. It's a symptom of the larger Delphi community mind rot, so to speak.
You've dishonored 2 families, basically. But that's okay. Let's see. What else did you...
And we're all blaming each other and having a big food fight online. And we were just too caught up in all of that to realize they were looking seriously at Ron Logan in the beginning.
On March 17th, 2017, the FBI executed a search warrant at the property of Ron Logan. The cell phone tower data actually shows Ron Logan's phone pinging on or near his property at the time that he says he was elsewhere.
A judge signed off on the FBI's probable cause affidavit, and that triggered a search of Ron Logan's home. And that was proof positive that they considered him a prime suspect.
The search at Ron Logan's property turned up nothing. However, this was a month after the murders. So if there was any evidence there, it no longer existed. When Logan was brought before a judge, media interest was high.
What happened in court today is not related to those 2 murders. Instead, Ronald Logan pleaded guilty to being a habitual traffic violator. He also admitted to violating his parole. Now, weeks ago, police searched Logan's house and vehicles, but have not connected him to the murders.
Ron Logan pled guilty to violating his parole on the previous drunk driving conviction, and he was then sentenced to 4 years behind bars.
4 years seems pretty excessive if you think about it. I mean, driving while intoxicated without a license. Because at this point, it seems they really don't have anything that ties him to the murders.
I think they didn't have enough to charge Ron for murder. I was so glad that he was in jail because for sure they was putting the pieces of the puzzle together to get him.
It's really odd. They had their eye on Ron Logan, but the bottom line is they never let this out to the public.
We're now 5 months past the murders, and the police have honestly started to move on from Ron Logan, and they're considering other suspects.
They have no real proof whatsoever that he was connected to the crime. I feel like both of the families felt like it was a waste of time to investigate Ron Logan.
The police, they're not looking at a couple of leads. They're not even looking at hundreds of leads. They're looking at tens of thousands of leads. And then in the summer of 2017, the police drop a sketch of the suspect.
Some people believe they saw a bridge guy and contributed to the sketch, but none of them reported seeing what happened to Libby and Abby.
When the first sketch came out, to me, it looked like a casting call for an old gangster movie, right down to the old cap. It looked like a lot of different people. You could make it look like anybody. I saw someone put George Washington up with that sketch, and it looks like it could fit. This was a witch hunt on steroids.
My name is Angela Sidlasky. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a victim advocate. I look at how unsolved homicide cases can impact a community. I have been getting to know the people of Delphi very intimately, but Delphi has always been a good old boy community where we don't talk about our problems. We kind of sweep them under the rug, and I think that these murders exposed a lot of that kind of underbelly. I think that's where some of the suspicion and paranoia started.
It seemed for a while like if you had ever broken the law in Indiana, particularly Carroll County, you could possibly be bridge guy.
There was hope at the first anniversary press conference that they maybe found the killer of Libby and Abby.
Very uncomfortable feeling. We're a year today. There's this notion that this is cold. It's not cold. This is not going to be cold. Over 30,000 tips. Those tips continue to come in. We'll continue to work them the very, very best that we can. If you're watching this and you're responsible, today may be your day. It might be tomorrow, but I can guarantee you your day's coming.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you all very much.
Looking back at that first year of what the police did, there was a lot of criticism that not enough was being done to find the killer. A lot of people started saying, hey, it's up to us.
People were definitely paranoid about the fact that law enforcement had no person of interest.
It went from the pretense of caring about what happened to the girls and caring about getting justice into the public, going off on their own, trying to turn vigilante.
People continued to turn in their exes, their neighbors, the guy down the street, and it seemed like there was a real momentum that they had the green light to turn in anyone and everyone.
As months turned into years, members of Libby and Abby's family appeared on the local media to express their frustration with the murder investigation.
I worry about him getting somebody else's child and destroying another family.
How do we not know this guy? It just seems so hard to believe that nobody seems to know, and we haven't gotten any answers yet.
The case kind of snowballed into this social media battlefield, and somewhere throughout that process, the girls got lost. You had like a 6-figure reward, for the killer.
I want to focus on, the fact that we've gotten tips, we keep getting tips. The reward is still there. I think it's around $225,000, so the reward is still there.
When you put that reward money out there, it was kind of like a drop of blood in a pool of sharks. Suddenly, everybody is interested. There was actually a guy that made a whole YouTube channel about his dad being the bridge guy.
Libby German got my father walking across the bridge before he brutally murdered them out in them woods. I would not joke about that on here.
There's no way the cops could be following up on every single thing that they're hearing. When they had gone a while with nothing to show, the police would put on a press conference.
We're releasing additional portions of the audio recording from that day. We're also releasing video recovered from Libby's phone. The video shows a suspect walking on the bridge. Watch the person's mannerisms as they walk. Do you recognize the mannerisms as being someone that you might know?
The Indiana State Police released audio of one word, guys, to be paired with the previously released Down the Hill and a 2-second video clip of the suspect.
When they only gave us the one word and the new video was really just a loop, I was just totally flabbergasted.
For a journalist covering the story, the audio clips and the video clips, they seem to raise more questions than answers. But it was the final reveal in the news conference that honestly was the most puzzling.
During the course of this investigation, we have concluded the first sketch released will become secondary as of today. The result of the new information and intelligence over time leads us to believe the sketch is the person responsible for the murders of these 2 little girls.
And I was like, huh? I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. Nothing like the first sketch.
Authorities said this was a replacement for the old sketch, noting that this was an entirely new suspect. This bridge guy is a man in his 20s or 30s. The first bridge guy sketch was a man in his 40s or 50s.
We believe this person might appear younger than his true age.
As a person who's built cases, prosecuted cases, and put people in jail, this doesn't make sense.
We will not stop.
Both of these sketches can't be right.
When the second sketch came out, and it looked nothing like the first one, I remember thinking immediately, the Carroll County Sheriff's Department has no clue what they're doing.
In order to keep things straight, people renamed the initial sketch Old Bridge Guy and called the new sketch Young Bridge Guy. Investigators were now searching for younger suspects, and the media had a field day covering the public reaction to the new sketch.
Last week, investigators released a new sketch of the man they say is the suspect in the murders. Since it went public, people across the country have been playing internet detective by finding people and creating side-by-side images of their face with the Delphi suspect sketch.
That's when the police came out and said, hey, tap the brakes. Don't do anything on your own. Don't put up these side-by-side images. Just send us your tips.
The sheriff's office wants people to think twice before posting these comparisons.
But it seemed to me like they were kind of doing the same thing, because anytime they, had a slight suspicion at all about someone, it'd be on the news.
And tonight at 11, investigators in Delphi now looking at a man accused of heinous crimes in Tippecanoe County. They want to see if this guy is responsible.
An accused predator, James Chadwell. He is reportedly being investigated for possible links to the slayings.
State police say Daniel Nations is a person of interest in the Delphi murders. Nations does have a criminal history in Indiana.
Law enforcement was crossing off individuals who would fit the mold of this killer. So sex offenders, violent offenders, even killers from out of Delphi, out of Indiana. And it smacked of desperation.
There should be plenty of DNA, there should be plenty of prints, but for whatever reason, it is not at their disposal. They are not using the evidence to lead them to the perpetrator. The crime scene, from what I am to understand, there weren't proper protocols that were followed.
Though our official sources weren't willing to appear on television, officials formerly with the investigations do say that the crime scene was compromised. They say volunteers walked all over it, contaminating the crime scene before the police could protect it. It is also alleged that evidence was lost and mishandled before it could be registered at the lab because of the inexperience of the investigators. Fingerprints and DNA are often inadmissible if they aren't collected properly. One former member of the task force told us point blank, "We got the training after the murders."
If, in fact, the crime scene and the evidence in this case were mishandled, the carousel of suspects makes more sense. If you don't have reliable forensic evidence, it's very hard to make a case. And you may have to look at suspects that have committed similar crimes in the past.
From my understanding, the way that they are pursuing this case is entirely contingent upon somebody confessing. That is their plan.
When Carroll County Prosecutor Robert Ives was on Channel 59, despite all the evidence they'd collected at the crime scene, it actually seemed like he was hoping for an immaculate confession.
The most likely thing is, and this is a terrible thing to hope for, is that some other crime would be solved and the person, as has sometimes happened in the past, the person would say, "Oh, I committed this crime in Delphi also."
We had all but given up hope until there was breaking news on WTHR 13.
And we begin tonight at 11 with some new hope for the town of Delphi and the families of Abby Williams and Libby German. State police are now looking for information about a social media profile with the name Anthony Schatz. They want to know if you or your kids interacted with that account. Today, we've learned they've identified the man behind that profile as Keegan Klein.
A predator posing as an attractive young man was contacting young girls. And one of the girls that he contacted before she died was Libby German.
This upcoming February will mark 5 years since the girls were murdered. New information has come before, only for hopes to get high and the case to remain unsolved.
I was still motivated by the initial call of police asking the public for their help. My friend Kelly and I took that challenge.
And for years, Julie Melvin and myself were always saying, what were they doing on their phone? And bingo. Here comes the Anthony Schatz profile, and here comes social media. Boom. This is what teenagers do. Nobody's going to the skating rink or the arcade. It's all online.
Detectives working on those Delphi murders are now looking for someone who created a fake online account, then used it to solicit child pornography and in-person meetings with young girls.
In December of 2021, police and the media make a big announcement, and that is that they've been able to link a guy named Kagan Klein, 26 years old from Peru, Indiana, to the online profile of Anthony Schatz, the profile that's been soliciting young girls and getting nude photos.
Investigators say he was in social media contact with one of the girls the night before she died.
The police had this lead from the very beginning of the investigation. Anthony Schatz was on Libby's phone, found at the crime scene. Police were really using people like Julie Melvin and Kelly Brown. They were trying to extract information in any way they could and build their case.
Keegan Klein was waiting a trial on child pornography charges prior to his name being announced in relationship to this case. Law enforcement knew about Keegan Klein and his business in catfishing kids in 2017. Police raided his Peru, Indiana home. They would have taken his computers, cell phones, storage devices, any kind of electronics that might hold evidence of that crime.
Keegan Klein has been in jail, facing 30 charges of child exploitation, child pornography, obstruction of justice, and identity deception.
It's not difficult to believe that the girls may have been set up. Maybe they went there to meet Anthony Schatz and another predator was there.
It wasn't like Libby was totally naive. I feel somehow that this Anthony Schatz made her feel comfortable, that she let her guard down.
Two innocent girls who just happened upon a monster is something that everybody can feel very passionate about because it's horrific.
When the information about Keegan Klein was made public, he immediately became the subject on social media.
So this is what he looks like in jail now, which is like horrendous. Oh my word, he just gives me the creeps, doesn't he?
He's a scumbag. He's scum of the earth level, and he needs to never see the light of day again.
We knew that Keegan was in jail and thought if Kelly just talks with him and gets to know him, perhaps we might be able to glean some information about this case.
I wanted him to confess that he had a part in the murders. He needed friends, he needed a support system, he needed somebody to talk to. I exploited his vulnerabilities in jail.
My name's Kelly Brown, and now I'm all shy because, like, I know you see me with my wet hair. I feel bad for you because you would think by now something would have happened.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
I catfished the catfisher.
Hi there. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, I just came in from the pool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do I know you?
A middle-aged woman might not have been that tempting for a man jailed on child solicitation charges, but that did not stop Kelly Brown. Her drive to solve Libby and Abby's murders was so great, she befriended Keegan Klein, a known child predator.
I sent you like $20.
Oh, yeah?
I'm trying to get information. I pumped up his ego. I knew that I was onto something when he first saw me. I got him on the hook, for sure.
I know you from the news. I feel bad for you because you would think by now something would have happened. I mean,
Yeah.
Keegan, I know.
Yeah, it's terrible. Put me on the news and everything. It's terrible.
Despite the fact that Keegan Klein admitted he'd had interactions with Libby, he denied that he killed these two little girls in a series of jailhouse interviews that he had with the press.
They're abducted and later found dead.
Right.
And that was not you.
No, 100% not.
Tell me about Anthony Schatz. Why did you create that profile?
I don't really know. I was just lonely, you know what I mean? Just talking to people. I don't know why I did it, really.
My name's Jerome Kern. My nickname is Jeep. I'm friends with Kagan's father. I was incredulous to know that somebody I'd met and, my friend's son was involved in something so awful. But when Kagan was in jail, he would solicit people for money in exchange for an interview.
If I put that $20 on there, does that mean it kind of goes to just the phone calls and stuff?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Unless it was put on the commissary. I haven't checked my box or anything.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know what to do.
I think Kelly and her friends overstepped. I don't think they had any business pretending to be friends with Kagan to try and get information.
See, I'm moving it like, look, there's me and my camera, there's me.
The rumors were that Kelly was sending him explicit photos, showing certain things on video.
I'm gonna set you down for a minute. I thought it would be fun for you to see me at the pool.
I was accused of being Kagan's girlfriend, sexting him, doing live nude shows. That did not happen. I did nothing inappropriate with Kagan Klein at all.
The Kelly Browns of the world. I think that's the spirit of the whole thing, is to be an investigator, a sleuth, to find the truth. It disgusts me because this is about, two girls that got murdered. And I think people forget that sometimes when they get caught up in all the fluff of this case. But I don't see a bone in Kagan that would want to kill somebody. So I just don't see how anybody could put him as involved in this thing.
Kagan would talk about finding Libby annoying, but never suggested that he was involved in the murders. After everything that I went through, it's hard to believe Kagan killed Libby and Abby. I am just a component in this massive thing that is Delphi. My work was used in Kagan's sentencing.
This evening, a Miami County judge sentenced Kagan Klein to 43 years in prison in a child solicitation case.
Now remember, Klein has never been charged in the Delphi case, but he did plead guilty in a separate child solicitation investigation.
For, a long time, a couple years. And the case was in a standstill. There was nobody else to point at.
Law enforcement needed an arrest in a way that you cannot possibly understand. When a case, especially a double murder, goes on for so long unsolved, we start to wonder who's benefiting from this. Certainly not the families of the victims.
It had been almost 3.5 years since a big proper press conference in this case, and suddenly they announced the first arrest.
Police have arrested and jailed 50-year-old Richard Allen in connection with the double murder.
Since everyone was still so focused on Kagan Klein, it was a bit of a shock that suddenly we're talking about a suspect that no one had ever heard of.
In a case like this, you hear all these names, and then suddenly a name comes up that nobody's ever heard before. I don't think anybody expected that.
The arrest made in the shocking Delphi murders of 2 girls that has stunned the small community. Police have arrested and jailed 50-year-old Richard Allen in connection with the double murder.
Richard Allen, you child murderer! Why did you do it? Shame on you!
I believe in a God of justice and righteousness. Today, I believe that same God has provided us with justice for Abby and Libby.
I am proud to report to you the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder.
When Richard Allen was arrested, the freaks and everybody that watches my channel were just so excited, so happy for the family to finally get some answers.
When I heard the news of Richard Allen, I said, please, Lord, give these girls justice and give these families peace and let this community heal.
Finally, an arrest after more than 5 years of investigating. And of all the suspects already, like Ron Logan, who's the owner of the land where the girls were found, and then Kegan Kline, who was convicted of child exploitation and who catfished Libby, who is this supposed murderer? A portly middle-aged dad who works at a CVS?
When Alan was arrested, I was absolutely shocked. Everybody was still very invested in the Kegan Kline thing online. Nobody had ever heard of Richard Allen at that point.
Neighbors told us Richard Allen grew up here in the small town of Mexico, just about 30 miles from Delphi.
He was a normal, everyday family. There was nothing out of the ordinary about him.
If you were to ask someone what their perception of Rick Allen was prior to the arrest, the answers would be funny sometimes, very helpful, quite unremarkable as a suspect.
We encourage everybody to continue to call in tips, not only about Richard Allen, but about any other person that you may have.
The public thought presumably they had their man. And yet they were still looking for more information, still asking the public for help. It still seemed like the case was open.
I don't know what my purpose is now. Before it was to keep the word out there and keep the search on. I guess now our purpose is to remind the public that the police are still asking for tips.
We cannot talk about the evidence that's in the probable cause or the evidence that's in the charging information.
They keep a case like this open for several reasons. One, the possibility of other suspects. Two, they want to avoid public scrutiny. Three, they believe their case may be weak and needs to be made stronger.
Everybody wants to know more information. I understand it's frustrating, but my goal is to maintain the integrity of this case.
I was very annoyed with the fact that they decided to arrest somebody in Richard Allen, and they didn't feel like they had an obligation to explain why.
Mr. Allen has had his initial hearing. He's entered a preliminary plea of not guilty. He is presumed innocent. We have probable cause established by the court for his arrest, and he is in custody. He's being held currently without bond.
Family members of Abby Williams and Libby German were at that same press conference, too.
It was a kind of bittersweet, you know, it's, I just know that there's another job, another hill for us to climb ahead of us, but we're up for the challenge, and we're going to keep after it. We're not going to stop.
It took another month for the arrest affidavit to be unsealed, and among many revelations was a stunning detail. Allen had actually gone to police in 2017, shortly after the murders, before information on Bridge Guy was released. Richard Allen was a witness who came forward and told police, hey, I was on the trail that day, I was on the bridge, I don't know anything, but I want to just let you know that I was there.
Investigators said that they had misfiled Allen's statement, only to find him and the statement suspicious years later. Allen's defense really had to get over the fact that he admitted he was there walking the bridge on the day that the girls were murdered. And let's be frank, he looked like Bridge Guy.
According to the affidavit, Allen admitted to wearing the blue jacket and blue jeans that matched the description of the suspect. Then again, he was wearing one of the most generic outfits in Indiana, a blue Carhartt jacket and blue jeans. This could be highly damaging circumstantial evidence, especially if he didn't realize that Libby German had caught him on camera. He'd think nothing of placing himself on the bridge.
October of 2022. We're talking more than 5 years later. He's been arrested, he's been to court, his house has been searched. All of this happened before anybody heard about it. If anybody is in Carroll County, man, get down to the courthouse and find out who this son of a bitch is.
I remember thinking, here we go again. We have another guy, he'll be gone in 2 weeks. I lost faith that the killer would ever be caught. I never thought it would happen.
How could we not know this guy? How did nobody place him when he was there at the bridge all the time?
multiple sightings of Bridge Guy by witnesses are consistent with Allen placing himself at the scene. Allen claims he was walking the trail, walking the bridge, watching the fish down below, and checking his stocks on his phone.
While the case against Richard Allen is mostly circumstantial, the investigators say there is one piece of evidence that ties him to the murders. They found an unspent .40 caliber round near the girls' bodies.
Investigators were able to match that bullet to a 6-hour handgun found in Allen's home. Allen had told investigators that he never let anyone handle his gun, and he was the only one that had access to it. Now, this is good investigation here. This is a skilled interviewer not leaving an opening. They want to lock him into this gun. In addition to the SIG .40 caliber, other guns and knives were found in Allen's home. At this point, the circumstantial pieces are all fitting together.
Knives are important here because in the search warrant affidavit, for the first time, it was officially revealed that their injuries were caused by a sharp object. There's no mention of DNA in the affidavit, so the bullet could be the best piece of forensic evidence that the state presents. The case is based largely on circumstantial evidence and eyewitness accounts that place Allen or someone that looks like him at the scene.
Podcasters are sleuthing and they are finding people from Richard Allen's past that worked with him in his past careers and things like that.
This literally is Richard Allen, as we call him, Little Dicky.
And they are not finding the kind of information that is satisfactory to them in terms of this Richard Allen to be the killer.
He does not have any criminal record. He only had traffic offenses, a seatbelt violation in 2003, and 2 speeding tickets, 2005 and 2011.
They're coming up with things like, oh, you know, this one time he was working cash register and he farted and he didn't apologize. You know, like things like that. And they're like, oh my God, isn't that awful? And it's just like, come on, man. It does not add up.
It's just hard to believe. He's a heck of a nice guy.
Very quickly, that turned into, he's a monster. Look at his eyes and look at his face. You can tell by his eyes that he's a killer. The public needed Rick Allen to be a monster.
On Friday, the first arrest was made in connection to the Delphi murders. 50-year-old Richard Allen, Libby's sister, tweeting, "Today is the day."
I was excited that there was an arrest. It seemed like they had a pretty strong case.
A lot of people were like, case closed. There it is.
The state pretty much came out and said, hey, we've got the goods on this guy. We've arrested him, but they kept all of the details secret. And how the public and the press in that moment tolerated this is really beyond me.
But a month after Richard Allen's arrest, the authorities did something really out of character. Under the guise of transparency, they made their appeal directly to the public.
Developing this morning, an Indiana judge has unsealed more than 100 documents related to the Delphi murders case. And in those documents, investigators reveal Richard Allen reportedly confessed to killing 14-year-old Libby German and 13-year-old Abby Williams several times, at least 5 times, during recorded prison phone calls to his wife and also his mom.
I believe the case is a slam dunk for Richard Allen. I think it absolutely shows that he did. The circumstantial evidence points right to him. On my show, and I'm able to put things together before the analysis of the case. Mapping is a huge part. Richard Allen says he was there from 1:30 to 3:30. There's a vehicle driving by the Hoosier Harvest Store camera that looks just like Richard Allen's vehicle, and that's at 1:27. Richard Allen said he was there at 1:30, which matches that. He immediately said he walked to the Freedom Bridge, whereupon he passes 3 girls. And those 3 girls had varying descriptions of him, but he admits seeing them and they saw him. A little bit later, a woman who's on the Monon High Bridge sees Richard Allen at about 1:55. So then that lady turns around, and while walking back, Abby and Libby had just been dropped off, and she passes Abby and Libby. The next person they're going to see is Richard Allen. I think then Richard Allen walked back a little bit, let them get onto the bridge, because that's the trap, and then he starts making his move. They see him coming, and they try to get off. Libby gets off the end of the bridge. Abby gets behind her. She's filming already, and that's Richard Allen in the video, 100%. That is exactly how Richard Allen described himself, wearing blue jeans, the blue Carhartt jacket, the hood up with a cap over his head.
According to the 2022 probable cause affidavit released on Richard Allen, another interesting fact is revealed. On the video recovered from Libby's phone, one of the girls utters the word gun. It was said before the girls were coaxed down the hill.
A gun. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Because most people couldn't understand, why wouldn't Abby and Libby have just run? But bring a gun into the picture, and of course, they would be ordered down the hill.
The state's case doesn't seem to have DNA, fingerprints, or other forensics to make their case. As far as we know, Richard Allen's .40 caliber pistol that was seized by police when they searched his home is the only tangible evidence that ties him to the crime scene.
Forensic examination did show that the bullet found at the crime scene had ejection marks on it and could have come from the gun found in Richard Allen's home. It's almost like a fingerprint, not quite as strong, but pretty close. And the only reason the suspect would have racked the weapon was for intimidation. It makes the effect, you know, he's getting ready to shoot.
That bullet is a problem. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Allen's gun made those ejection marks on the bullet. Allen's defense claims the science just isn't there.
Richard Allen was brought from the Westville Correctional Facility, a state prison, shackled at the waist and ankles, for a hearing that lasted all of 10 minutes.
I was sitting in the courtroom, awaiting Richard Allen to come in for his first hearing. The entire courtroom was silent, but here's this small stature of a man. He's my height. I'm 5'4". Libby and Abby were 5'4". And I'm looking, and I know he was arrested, and I know they have circumstantial evidence, but in my mind, I'm saying, no, this isn't the right guy.
Our client's the wrong guy. We want things unsealed. But that's how confident we are in our client. That's how confident we are that the evidence is nothing for us to worry about.
Absolutely believe that the information is accurate, that Richard Allen confessed. I believe Richard Allen is Bridge Guy.
The defense has to overcome the fact that the prosecutors have released to the public that there is a confession, and that the prosecutors are really trying the case in public at this point, despite the fact they haven't actually released the confession. But the defense feels that they're pretty confident that Allen's innocent.
This was a problem. We had no information about even the content of these confessions, yet the community continued to speculate and draw conclusions.
Prosecutors say Richard Allen confessed up to a half dozen times. I have seen cases fall apart based on false confessions.
The prosecution says they can't release a transcript of the confessions because of the gag order by the courts. So who asked for the gag order? The prosecution. So it does give one reason to be skeptical about those confessions.
If crime scene protocols are not properly followed forensically, the prosecution needs somebody to confess on their own.
Confessing something horrible that you have done to somebody that you care about means one of two things. It either means you are under some duress to confess to something that you didn't do, or you are so overwhelmed with remorse and guilt and you are seeking some kind of reassurance, some kind of support from the people that matter to you the most. But I think there are too many unanswered questions about this confession. And I think until we have the answers to those questions, we do not know why this confession occurred or how valid it is.
I would say that there's a lot of reason to believe that they are railroading Rick Allen. Eyewitness accounts, false confessions, it's all just hearsay statements. It's speculation, as far as I'm concerned. Pseudoscience with the bullet. I mean, it is insulting to your intelligence, the way that the case is presented. Law enforcement is super tight-lipped and seems to have ulterior motives. The fix is in for Richard Allen. They vilified him in such a way that he doesn't really have a chance.
I believe that the prosecution kind of needs this to go away, and so it would certainly benefit them if something were to happen to Rick. When Rick walked into his hearing in June, he looked like somebody who was terminally ill. What are they doing to him in there?
Really a wild new twist update in the case. Richard Allen's attorneys insist their client is innocent.
Social media lit up when the defense dropped what's called a Frank's motion. And that basically was a motion to suppress any evidence that they actually obtained after the arrest. The defense said the arrest was problematic, nothing afterwards should be fair game. And really they started to point to discovery, suggesting that maybe somebody else was responsible for these murders.
If those lawyers are telling the truth in their court filing,
well, this story just went nuts. They say that it wasn't this guy. They say it was a ritualistic cult that killed those girls. The defense is suggesting that Abby and Libby were killed by a group of Odinists, which is a Norse cult that has ties to white supremacy. They purportedly practice animal sacrifices and even human sacrifices as a ritual. And the defense says that this was likely a ritualistic killing because of the way the bodies were found.
Tree branches were placed on the body in such a way to supposedly represent Norse symbols, a calling card for the killer or killers. This information had the effect the defense desired. It created doubt about whether Richard Allen was involved in the murders.
I didn't know what to think. I don't want to form an opinion now before the trial starts.
The defense wants people to buy into elements that will subsequently cast doubt on the prosecution. There are elements in here that, if true, would change the way I would perceive the case. But the Odinist cult sounds like something right out of a movie.
This is a common legal maneuver. The defense, bound by the gag order, through their motion, releases information to suppress and disqualify pieces of evidence. This information becomes part of the public record. And not only does it help Richard Allen in his defense, but it gives the public information they've been waiting for years.
The defense was willingly and graciously providing details of a crime that for 6 years has been a secret. And if it hasn't created a seismic shift yet, it will, and it should.
In the fall of 2023, going on 7 years since the murders of Abby and Libby, defense attorneys for the accused killer, Richard Allen, suddenly bring up something in discovery that changes the conversation about his guilt. White power Odinists, ritualistic killings, and the possibility that other people might have been involved in the murders. And suddenly it's all anyone can talk about.
I don't know if any of this is true, but what I can say is that the defense has done a dang good job here.
It is fantastic PR. Now we're all talking about Odinism.
This is important because Richard Allen doesn't have any ties to Odinism.
If what the defense contends is correct, the case against Richard Allen is weak. This is a defendable case and a difficult case to prosecute. The confession could be explained, the bullet is compromised, the witness accounts are inconsistent, and not one witness can positively identify Richard Allen as being at the scene of the crime at the time the girls were killed. Maybe law enforcement should consider old information like they did when they reconsidered Richard Allen. The FBI thought Ron Logan was involved.
When I look at the bridge guy and watch him walk in that little clip, I see Ron Logan. That's all I can see. And a lot of that is due to the work of an FBI profiler, a forensic artist named Lois Gibson.
A woman that you could call the foremost expert in forensic art says Ron Logan is the bridge guy. A and B both seem to be males of similar height. Both have similar hip to shoulder width ratios. Due to the general similarities of build and the uncommonly large protruding belly shared by both A and B, it is a strong possibility that A and B are one and the same individual.
The biggest reason to suspect Ron Logan was not just that the bodies were found on his property, but that he had created a false alibi prior to the bodies being discovered. That's huge.
Ron Logan had the tropical fish run alibi 3 hours before anyone knew there was a crime committed.
The FBI also claimed that Ron Logan's cell phone pinged twice near the crime scene on the evening of the 13th. So that, to me, is very suspicious.
What could Ron Logan have been doing in the woods near the crime scene when everyone else was looking for the girls near the bridge?
Maybe investigators never brought charges against Logan because they had no physical evidence tying him to the crime. The crime scene was apparently compromised, police didn't search his property right away, and it seemed police were waiting on him to confess. Something they never could or will achieve since Ron Logan died of COVID in 2020.
It's too late for Ron Logan. He's dead. I mean, those answers, if he's responsible or was involved, went with him to the grave.
If you look at the evidence at the crime scene that we know about, one of the victims was found nude, which suggests a sexual motive. One of the other ones was dressed in another person's clothes, which suggests some thoughts about posing. All those, to me, are consistent with a sexually motivated crime. Ron Logan checks a lot of boxes. The history of violence, the criminal history, the alcohol problem, the lying, the deception, the fact that people who are close to him believe he's capable of doing it is very important to listen to. The overall evidence, the physical similarity between Bridge Guy is another pro. You cannot rule him out, certainly, as a suspect. And yet, I'm not convinced. I don't believe that Ron Logan stands up to the test of time in terms of being a viable suspect. I can't think of anybody who has started that kind of crime in their 70s. I would not take him completely off the board, but I would put him over to the side. As far as we know, there is no evidence that Kegan Kline was on the bridge on February 13th with Abby and Libby. Richard Allen, I don't know of any criminal history that he has. His age, he would not be somebody I would expect to be engaging in this kind of behavior. If he was interested in children that are 12 or 13 years old, I would expect to find that somewhere. So I don't see Richard Allen as a viable suspect. There's no indication that he knew Libby and Abby. I wouldn't bet money on Kegan Kline, Ron Logan, or Richard Allen. I think it is very possible that the killer or killers are still out there.
This crime is unsolved. The lack of details has been traumatic because anytime you have an information vacuum, it's human nature that we want to fill in the gaps.
Every damn thing you've reported on your podcast has been a leak.
If I was murdered, then come get me, mother.
If I knew something, I'd tell you.
The insults are frightening, as are the violence. I was scared for my life. People have physically threatened me. Here's one. Melvin is nothing but a snot-nosed rich bitch. Can someone shut this crazy person down? To which a response, yes, locked and loaded. The level of hatred, I've never seen so much evil in my life. Evil that was done to the girls, and evil we've done to each other. We're supposed to be focused on finding the killer for these two young girls, Libby and Abby. The worst thing that can happen to someone is to lose the child that's been murdered. I'm sorry, I just didn't think it was gonna affect me just talking through it, you know? Sorry about that.
Covering the story of a small town tearing itself apart over this double murder is heartbreaking in its own right. Now add to this a courtroom drama that is plaguing the case and the trial, potentially, of Richard Allen, the man accused of the murders.
A new hearing for Richard Allen, new attorneys, and a new trial date set by the special judge.
7 years have gone by and the case really has no closure. No one close to the case or close to the girls can speak out publicly because of the gag order over everything. However, previous to this, the families did speak publicly and to the media about their loss.
Abigail, the only granddaughter I had, but I would introduce her as my granddaughter, my best friend.
She should be here. She's supposed to be here. We're supposed to be getting ready for her freshman year of high school. I just miss all the things that she should be here for.
She could turn anybody's frown upside down. She could make anybody's bad day better. So the world got shortchanged. I did. Everybody did.
Donors built a ballpark to honor the girls, but there's still so many unanswered questions. The town still grieves.
There was a fog over the town and over our house, and we had to get out. We moved to Frankfort, Indiana the summer after my sophomore year of high school. I wanted to get as far away from Delphi as I can. Every time it's cold or I get in the snow, it's just, I remember. You lost Abby and Libby? I don't want to remember anymore. I pray that somebody would be caught and that Abby and Libby's families and the town of Delphi are able to find peace. At the end of the day, that's all we want.